The jaws do not slam shut. They close slowly, deliberately. Fenrir's teeth press into flesh that never flinched. Bone resists for half a heartbeat, then snaps, sharp and final, like a branch crushed under ice. Blood pours onto the stone floor of Asgard, steaming as it spreads, staining gold with red. The gods freeze. No cheers, no spells, no thunder. Just the sound of a wolf howling, not in victory, but in realization. And Tyr screams, only once. His arm is gone. Not stolen by a monster. It is taken as payment. That is the moment the myth usually calls heroic. But strip away the poetry and look closer. Tyr was the god of oaths, the god of law, the god who believed words could bind reality. And yet his arm was severed because of a lie spoken in his presence. Not Fenrir's lie. The gods, the wolf had been clear. Just terms. The ribbon tightens. The truth collapses. The lie holds. And one god pays for all of them. This is not the story of a savage beast biting a trusting god. This is the story of how system lied and demanded blood to make that lie feel righteous.
Unveil the legends.
Before screams echoed through Asgard, the gods believed something dangerous. They believed they were in control. The halls rang with laughter. Mead flowed freely. Victory felt permanent. Every enemy had been crushed. Every threat named and catalogued. But safety built on prophecy is never real, because the prophecy had already been spoken. Fenrir would kill Odin. Ragnarök would come. The world would end in fire and ruin. Odin did not hear destiny. He heard eviction. The Allfather did not react like a warrior preparing for battle. He reacted like a ruler terrified of losing power. He watched Fenrir grow with a calculating eye, measuring his teeth, his hunger, his shadow. Every heartbeat of the wolf felt like a countdown. Thor wanted violence. End it early. End it loudly. That was Thor's solution to everything. Loki said little. His silence was heavier than denial. Guilt does that. Watching your child grow into a prophecy you helped create does strange things to the soul. And Tyr? Tyr believed in law. Not morality, not mercy. Law. Rules that made chaos predictable. Oaths that shaped the future. Systems that allowed order to survive even when truth was inconvenient. So Fenrir was not killed. He was raised. Fed scraps of trust. Surrounded by watchful eyes. The Wolf noticed. Predators always do. How conversations stopped when he entered. How laughter came back only after he left. How hands drifted toward weapons without realizing it. Only Tyr stayed, not because he loved Fenrir, because he respected the rules that bound them both. He fed the wolf, sat beside him, spoke to him plainly. When he promised something, he kept it. When he said nothing, it meant something too. Fenrir learned the difference between fear and honesty. The gods smelled like panic. Tyr smelled like consequence. And peace was never possible, because prophecy had already poisoned it. Thick links, the kind of restraint that announces power. The gods wrapped Fenrir in it like a challenge. He shattered it. The sound echoed through Asgard, metal screaming as it tore apart. Laughter followed, but it was nervous now, forced. The second chain came layered with magic, runes etched deep, spells humming with arrogance. The gods told themselves this one was different. Fenrir broke it too. That was when fear stopped pretending. This wasn't a test. This wasn't a game. This was a future they could no longer intimidate, so they went to the dwarves. Not for strength, for deception. Gleipnir was forged from things that should not exist. Looked harmless, light as breath. Fenrir recoiled. Not because it was strong, because it wasn't honest. This was not a chain meant to hold him. It was a chain meant to fool him. Fenrir refused, calmly. Unless one condition was met. A guarantee, a hostage. a promise written in flesh. The gods went silent. Thor's hand twitched, but not forward. Odin's eye narrowed, but he did not move. Others looked away. No one volunteered, except Tyr. He stepped forward without ceremony, without speech, without drama. He knew. Fenrir knew he knew. That was the cruelty of it. Tyr placed his hand between the wolf's teeth. The jaws hovered there, warm breath washing over skin, heartbeats sinking for one fragile moment. Fenrir searched Tyr's face, not for courage, but for truth, and he found it. Tyr understood this was a lie, and he accepted it. The ribbon tightened. It did not snap. It did not strain. It held. Something ancient broke in Fenrir's chest. Not anger, trust. His jaws closed. And justice screamed. This is the part the myth rushes past. The poets call it sacrifice because sacrifice sounds noble, clean, necessary. But sacrifice implies choice freely given. Fenrir never chose imprisonment. He chose trust. That difference changes everything. The gods did not defeat Fenrir with strength. They defeated him with procedure, with language, with a system that could disguise betrayal as law. And Tyr stood at the center of it. He was not fooled. He was not coerced. He was not ignorant. Tyr knew Gleipnir was a lie wrapped in silk. He understood exactly what would happen the moment. The ribbon tightened, and he still placed his hand between Fenrir's teeth. Why? Because law demands legitimacy. If Fenrir was bound without consent, the act would be naked tyranny. But if a cost was paid, if blood was spilled, then the story could be rewritten, not as fear, as justice. Tyr's severed arm became a receipt, proof that the gods had paid. For safety. Look at what happens immediately after. The gods laugh, not kindly, not with relief, with triumph. They mock the wolf. They boast about cleverness. Odin congratulates himself. Thor sneers. Loki screams in horror, but no one listens. And Tyr? He says nothing. Silence becomes his final oath. Here's the dark theory hidden beneath the legend. Tyr was not a hero. He was a function, a necessary wound that allowed injustice to pass inspection. Because systems do not collapse when they are cruel, they collapse when they are exposed. Tyr ensured the cruelty looked lawful. Fenrir understood instantly. This was not the betrayal of liars. This was worse. This was betrayal by someone who told the truth and still allowed the lie to stand. That kind of betrayal does not create rage. It creates certainty. Fenrir stops struggling, not because he is broken, because he is learning. Chains do not end threats. They teach patience. Time behaves differently for the bound. Days blur. Years rot. Pain becomes background noise. Gleipnir cuts into Fenrir's flesh as he grows. The ribbon that looked soft becomes a knife that never stops moving. Saliva pools at his feet. His jaws strain against a sword wedged between his teeth, forced there to keep him from biting again. Venom drips from his mouth, seeping into the soil, poisoning the land itself. Even the earth begins to suffer. The gods interpret silence as victory. They feast, they build, they forget. Odin convinces himself the prophecy has been delayed, that time can be cheated, that the future can be outpaced. This is the final lie. When Ragnarök arrives, it does not feel chaotic. It feels earned. The chain breaks, not because it was weak, but because no injustice holds forever. Fenrir rises, not as a beast unleashed, but as a consequence finally acknowledged. He does not roar. He walks across fields of fire, across the bones of old gods and older promises. When he finds Odin, there is no speech, no confrontation, no anger, just fulfillment. The Allfather dies inside the prophecy he tried to imprison. And Tyr never faces Fenrir again. Their story ended with the bite. Instead, Tyr meets Garm at the gates of hell, another guardian, another creature bound to duty. Another symbol of order mistaken for safety. They fight, not out of hatred, out of obligation. They kill each other. Perfect balance. The god who lost his arm to uphold law loses his life to it. Here is the cruel irony etched into the bones of the myth. The gods broke their own values to prevent the end. That betrayal guaranteed it. Fenrir did not destroy the world out of malice. He fulfilled a role designed by fear. The gods created the monster they feared and then blamed him for becoming it. Tyr lost his arm to a lie told in the name of safety. A lie that said the future could be changed. It could not, because when power lies to survive, it teaches the oppressed how to end it. And when law abandons justice, destruction stops being evil. It becomes correction. So ask the question without comfort. Was Tyr a hero, or was he the proof that even truth can become complicit in cruelty? Leave your answer below, and stay with this myth, because Fenrir was not the gods' only mistake. They repeated this pattern again, and the second time the world did not burn, it drowned.